Hi, I'm Dan Brever, and this is my policy analysis for Political Science 330, Section 1 with Jonah Ralston. My problem statement was public faith in government is waning, and voters are beginning to feel more and more that their voice does not matter. Now, this can be evidenced by voter turnout. You'll see post-1900 that there has been a trend line going down, and that doesn't matter if it's a presidential or a midterm election. Down ballot, we also see that for the Wisconsin State Supreme Court. Numbers have been pretty minimal, and you'll notice quite the steep drop off. We're seeing numbers here for midterms and presidential elections in the modern day that are roughly 50 to 60%. Wisconsin State Supreme Court, the highest voter turnout was 33.92% in 2016. You'll also notice at the bottom that there really isn't a trend line on this. It's not going in any particular direction, and all the numbers across the board have been disappointing. Now, in Wisconsin, we've been trying to address voters' lack of faith by sparking new conversation over partisan redistricting. You'll see here that in most of these elections, the Democrats are not being given the number of seats that's representative to the portion of the vote share that they won. 2020 is pretty egregious with them winning 50% of the vote, a majority of the vote share, and ultimately only winning 38 of the 99 seats in the state assembly. Now, Wisconsin has done a number of things to address this. They brought forth a legal case that went to the U.S. Supreme Court. This was Gill v. Whitford that happened in 2018. Ultimately, the status quo has remained. But 55 counties back fair maps, 54 counties have passed resolutions, and 28 counties have referendums supporting fair maps. And Marquette University Law Poll conducted a poll on January 24th, 2019. It found 72% of Wisconsin voters say they prefer redistricting or legislative and congressional districts to be done by a nonpartisan commission, while 18% prefer redistricting to be done by the legislature and governor. We find that this actually doesn't matter your partisan leaning. Even Republicans whose party has benefited from the current partisan redistricting support a nonpartisan commission. That Marquette Law Poll found majorities in each partisan group favor a nonpartisan commission for redistricting, with 63% of Republicans, including leaners, favoring a nonpartisan commission. This is all relevant because we just finished up with the census and redistricting should be happening very soon. In the year 2000, Arizona adopted a new system for redistricting. This was a very popular process because it was approved in a statewide vote by roughly 12%. The reason why I call it partisan redistricting for good is because normally people would think partisan redistricting is an awful bad thing that skews the process, but Arizona decided that they needed partisan redistricting to make sure that their elections were still competitive and that both parties still had a reasonable chance of claiming control. The Arizona Independent Redistricting Commission draws the lines. This is a citizen commission that is made up of average people, and it will include 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, and 1 independent. Applications to become a member of the commission are solicited and reviewed by the Arizona Commission on Appellate Court Appointments. That is my solution 1. Solution 2 is from California. This is redistricting for geography. In 2008 and in 2010, California adopted a different system for redistricting. This was a state that was dominated by Democrats. It is well known that the California Republicans were at a significant disadvantage. Instead of considering partisan leanings, California now prohibits that. And they mostly instruct their commission to draw based upon geography. The California Citizens Redistricting Commission consists of 14 members. The first 8 members of the commission are randomly selected from a list of applicants who have advanced to become finalist candidates. Then the 8 members of the commission are charged with the responsibility of choosing the final 6 members from the list of remaining finalist candidates. Among these 14 members includes 5 Republicans, 5 Democrats, and 4 independents. To approve the new districts, 9 of the commission members must vote yes. However, the minimum of 9 votes must include 3 yes votes from members registered with the 2 largest parties and 3 yes votes from the other members. Solution 3, this one comes from Connecticut. Now, I call this supermajority or bust redistricting because the ones who are charged with redistricting are the Connecticut state legislature. But to draw those new districts, they must form a supermajority of 2/3 consensus. They are given a strict, hard deadline for when they need to draw these lines by. If the deadline is not met, a backup independent commission will draw the outstanding maps. If the backup commission fails to adopt maps by November 30th, the state Supreme Court has until February 15th of their year ending in the number 2 to adopt maps. Since 1981, the legislature has been unable to redistrict by the state's constitutional deadline. As a result, the backup commission authored all district maps in the state. The commission is comprised of 9 members, 2 of whom are chosen by the President of the Senate, Senate Minority Leader, House Speaker, and House Minority Leader. These 8 select the 9th member within 30 days of their own selection as commissioners. I will now discuss the evaluative criteria for each of these solutions. The evaluative criteria will rank them in terms of which solution works best, first, second, or third. Evaluative criteria A is fairness. This would mean preventing what has happened in Wisconsin and promoting the likelihood that if a party wins the majority of a vote share, they would also be able to win the majority of seats within its state legislature chamber. Evaluative criteria B is competitive. This would mean having elections that are close, within 10% or closer. Evaluative criteria C is cohesion. This would mean keeping communities together. Whitewater is a classic example of how this has not happened. Whitewater is within 3 different counties. They're within 2 different congressional districts. They are a community that has been split up and their voting power has been suppressed. This can be especially detrimental when it is applied to communities of color. For fairness, Arizona ranked 3rd among the listed solutions. The reason for this is that they've had multiple times that vote share winners have not won a majority of seats in their state legislature chambers. There has also been fierce litigation that has gone to the Arizona State Supreme Court and the U.S. Supreme Court. Many nonprofit orgs and foundations in the state are now pleading for updates so that we can be certain that such litigation does not happen in the future and cost the taxpayers tons of money. In a report from Michigan State University, artificial partisan advantage in Arizona was 1.05 in favor of Democrats, and this was an excessive advantage of 6.1%. For competitive in Arizona, they ranked 1st among solutions. Now, the reason for this was in the 2018 midterms, 16 of 27 races in the Arizona State House of Representatives were decided within a margin of 10%. There was also 5 of 30 races for the Arizona State Senate that were decided within a margin of 10% as well. This would mean that 36.84% of races for their state legislature were reasonably competitive, which was a higher percentage than the other solutions. For cohesion, Arizona's population of color is 3,025,802 people, roughly 44.31% of Arizonans. 3 of 9 Arizonan districts for the U.S. House of Representatives are majority people of color. 33.33, this would mean that 33.33% of Arizona congressional districts are made up of communities of color compared to the population of color, which is 44.31%. This would make it the closest to their representative population. The pros and cons to Arizona's system are that on the pro side, it guarantees meaningful public participation because the independent commission is made up of average people. It creates safeguards that help foster accurate representation for minority groups, excels at keeping communities together, and inspires a high number of competitive races. The cons to this system are that it inspires fierce litigation, inspires a divisive culture in the state, which actually has resulted in commission members being threatened for their lives, major harassment, and this does not solve the issue of vote share / seat share. As mentioned, it has happened multiple times in the past decade that a party won the majority vote share but did not win a majority of seats in the state legislature. Now we'll move on to California. For criteria A, fairness, they rank second among these solutions. California law forbids drawing lines that would benefit any particular party or politician. This makes it much easier for them to create fair elections and ensure that whoever wins the vote share also ends up winning the majority of seats in their state legislature. Californians are much happier with this system, and in the Michigan State University report, artificial partisan advantage was 1.46 for Democrats, and that was only excessive by 1.8%, which was pretty marginal and more than Arizona's. For competitive, in the 2018 midterms, 12 of 80 races for the California State Assembly were decided within a margin of 10%, which means that 15% of races for their state legislature were reasonably competitive. Now, that's actually not a very high number. The other states that we're looking at are getting numbers in the 30s for competitive races. So not that great, and that is the reason why they've ranked third among solutions for this. For criteria C, cohesion, California ideally should have the best system for this because they are explicitly looking for geography and communities and trying to keep them together. Nevertheless, they rank second, fairly close. Commissioners are instructed to keep existing communities and geographies together rather than considering partisan leanings. California's population of color is 24,329,696 people, which is roughly 62.15% of Californians. 40 of 53 Californian districts for the U.S. House of Representatives are majority people of color. That means 75.47% of California congressional districts are made up of communities of color compared to 62.15% Californians of color. The pros of this system is that it also guarantees meaningful public participation on the independent commission. It creates safeguards that help foster accurate representation for minority groups. It excels at keeping communities together. It completely removes partisan balance considerations. It creates one of the fairer maps for overall partisan advantage in the country. And the cons to this is that it does not create many competitive races, not many at all. It also does not resolve competitive advantage for incumbents, which was one of the things that they were explicitly going to solve. They didn't like that members of the California state legislature were just being reelected time and time again. Now, moving on to Connecticut, for fairness, they ranked first among solutions. This happened because they have become a model for partisan fairness throughout the nation. It's amazing. From Michigan State University's report, their artificial partisan advantage was only 0.2 in favor of Democrats, which was just an excessive advantage of nothing. So, very good system. For competitive, in the 2018 midterms, 15 of 36 races for the Connecticut State House were decided within a margin of 10%. And then also 48 of the 151 races for the Connecticut State Senate were decided within a margin of 10%. This means that 33.69% of races for their state legislature were reasonably competitive. And then lastly, cohesion for Connecticut. Connecticut's population of color is 1,151,090 people, which is roughly 32.06% of Connecticuters. 0 of the 5 Connecticut districts for the U.S. House of Representatives are majority people of color, which is shocking and maybe a little appalling. It certainly speaks to how these districts could have been drawn a little better to provide representation. For the Connecticut system, the pros are that it creates the fairest maps in the country for overall partisan advantage. The numbers that they got in the Michigan State University report were outstanding. And it also inspires a high number of competitive races in Connecticut. But the cons are that it does not guarantee meaningful public participation, and that it historically has ensured it has historically not ensured accurate representation for communities of color. I also would ask if it actually served its intended purpose, because it seems that what the goal here was to get both parties to cooperate and form a bipartisan supermajority to work together, but that has not happened. Ever since 1981, they have been unable to form a bipartisan supermajority, and the Independent Commission has had to create these lines for all of those decades. My recommendation would be the Partisan Redistricting for Good plan from Arizona. You'll see that they ranked first in competitive and cohesion, which is great. Fairness, now this was a system that was mostly designed to make sure that whoever won the vote share would also win the majority of seats in their state legislature chambers. But although that has happened most of the time, there have been instances throughout the past decade where that did not happen, and that the losing party actually still won the majority of seats. What my belief is that in Arizona, it is a very closely partisan environment. The numbers are even, and we're seeing the state shift from a conservative state to a liberal state. When people turn out to vote, it is very close races as is. And I'm not so certain to say that the fact that these errors have happened isn't just because of the extreme close elections that they have there. Overall, it should be noteworthy that California's goal was to create a very cohesive environment to keep communities together. Arizona outperformed them, and Arizona has also stuck to their goal of creating competitive elections so that everybody feels motivated to go out and vote. Thanks for watching this presentation on my policy analysis.